there a source hearing us now?
So I hear it here. Maybe I just have to do the TV.
So the deferred revenue usable with federal or provincial approval, that $891,921, is that over and above the 1.6 million?
Yes. it
Okay,
is.
so we're at 2.5 or so.
Right.
Okay,
It's recorded as deferred revenue because it's not discretionary.
right.
It
right,
has to be
It's allocated,
approved.
yeah, okay.
And a lot of municipalities use it every year. In this case, it's been carried forward, so.
Okay, and it's not reflective of our household total for reserve fund. Okay,
And it probably will go down significantly this year based on your capital program. So
okay, okay.
it's for use primarily for your current capital budget.
What's
look at
the accumulated landfill closure accrual for 215,000?
So when we do the post-closure reports that I presented to the Public Works Committee, when it states in there that you only have 54 years left, this is what we've saved thus far from those reports, although the report changed drastically last year. But we have addressed that change in our operational budget for environmental services.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a portion that we put away every year for it.
Yes.
So we're gonna be on par for when close, like the money to
For the
close?
54 years.
And the deferred revenue, if we can just go back to that, those are typically funding sources that we receive from the senior levels of government. And they're always attached to a condition or a specific project. So there's, we can't just spend it on any project we want. It has to be in what they've given us the funds for. Like Norris is, for something with aggregate, it has to be related to that. So that's the deferred revenue.
It's interesting too, if you look at the bottom of that same page, you'll see the ongoing capital funding sources. That's really all you can rely on. And in any given year is that $446,000. Not very much as you've seen with some projects. It's very difficult to to plan ahead when that's all you can rely on.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions about reserves? Maybe we can go into the debt management policy.
This is another one that a lot of small municipalities have trouble dealing with. And a lot of small municipalities still refuse to issue any long-term debt. The problem is your infrastructure deficit will just continue to grow. In other words, the roads will get worse, the building will deteriorate. So
Well, we're already there on that
sometimes,
one.
sometimes you have to use that. There's no question about that. The issue becomes with the policy, it's trying to set out that, yes, you need that if you're going to keep your infrastructure up to date and if projects are large enough that you have no other sources of funding. But what level of debt is reasonable and how does it affect the taxpayer, the debt service costs? And you want to manage it so that it doesn't dramatically affect them, especially in 1 year. You're going to be you could see the effect of one of those type of dramatic increases, for instance, if you go ahead with a large project and have to issue debt. Again, with debt, the same approach was taken. What level is acceptable? Well, that depends, I guess, on what you can absorb. But again, it just compares you to the Northern Ontario average to see how you stack up relative to other municipalities. So as of December 31st, 2021, which is the last year available for all the financial records for the municipalities, the average debt per household was 1,000, where did it go? 892. Bonfield is standing at in the same year, 1,608. With the debt issued early this year for the grader, and with the principal repayments of debt during this year, by the end of the year, you'll be at $1,769 per household, which puts you right about in the middle of the pack, which isn't bad. The issue becomes if you need to go ahead with a project like the one big project that is shown as for consideration on your capital budget, you jump right up to near the top in debt per capita. And that, I know some municipalities that got hit that way and it had a huge impact on them. The other problem with it is your ability in the future to use debt any further if it gets too high. The province has a limit that they set, which point they will, and they have stepped in to a municipality and taken over control. There isn't one municipality I know of in the province that aims to get to that level. It's much higher than the average, but it's just there for the province to have that ability to step in if a municipality gets to that point. So the chart just shows you, where you stand. The other issue is if you look at the last page, your principal repayments each year for the next 5 years based on the current debt service program. You can see they're not going to change by much if there's no further debt, and the debt service charges will stay at about that same level. That's the principal and interest combined. Most of your debt is serial debt, so it's equal. It's equal, same payment each year. Principal payments will go up, the interest will go down as you get closer to the end of the term. You have another project that is going to be coming in a few years, and that's the Castle Home debt that you will be assuming your share of. That is going to impact your debt per household. But so long as you follow the current plan and increase what you have in your budget a little bit each year, so that by the time that debt is issued, it won't have a big effect on the taxpayer in that year. And a lot of municipalities are following, in the Castle Home group, are following that policy. They're building up the amount they have in their budget for the Castle Home capital levy when it finally comes. I understand there's going to be an update sometime this year
Yes,
on that project.
the board should have an update within the next 2 to 3 months. And then new information will come back to the municipalities affected, and we'll have to amend anything that may happen, either if it goes up or goes down, but there'll be more information to the board first and then presented to us. We've left our operating budget as we know it to be, because we don't know what those changes will be, but there will be updates coming.
Okay, so my questions are, sorry. So, so outside the scope are all of these ABCs, right? So the District of Nipissing Social Services. So, and I noticed this on another document. Where is the school board levies? Because I don't see them. Are they funded differently? Are they not through our operating?
No, so it's not through our operating or our capital budget. There's a tax rate that the province gives us, and that's the tax rate that we have to use.
Okay.
Every municipality uses the same tax rate. So it shows on the overall taxes, but it doesn't show on our budgets.
Okay, okay, so it, but how is it accounted for? Because we have to pay that, right?
Yeah, so in the final, when we bring everything in, then but it marks as an in and an out.
Okay, okay, perfect, thanks.
You collect it and pay it over to them.
Yeah,
Oh, like HST, right? It's kind of like a pass-through. Okay.
yes.
And then the target levels and this, if we were going to review this policy, the target levels as well might be an appendix too. So then it's current information.
We could do that.
What's the number 10 on here? It says Bondfield Township, December 31st. Oh, that's with the development road or with that other?
That's just
Yeah,
to show you
yeah.
how much your debt. per
Right,
household
right,
would
would
rise
be
if
if
you-
it was, yeah. I think there's an extra zero also on the development road, assuming it's
could be
got an extra
Yeah.
zero there, yeah,
a little slip of a.
yeah, yeah. And then down in our capital budget revenue sources, the capital levy and operating budget, that 130,000, that's already allocated, right? Like that was allocated for that pickup truck, was that?
It's
Okay.
still decision of council.
Right,
Right.
okay, so. So basically what this is telling us is that our debt limit right now, we're at 143,773. We can't, that's,
Away from
yeah,
the target, and it isn't it's not cast in stone, it's just.
no,
an
yeah,
indicator.
it's just risk management now, right? So. Okay, that's me.
So if we were to do any work on Development Road, that's also financed over 20 years?
Isn't there a reserve for that?
There-
When you go into the Development Road, assuming, is it $2,500,000 over 20 years?
That's what the assumption is added into the graph, just to show you if we were to do the project and we went into debt for that project, it's to show where you would be sitting in that current household debt limit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's not really, the road would need to be redone before we're done paying for it.
Mm.
Well, 20 years is the expected life of asphalt, so that's why that's.
Yeah, but the asphalt quote was like, I thought we saw 3.5 for
Yeah.
that. So we financed for 20 years on chip seal. We're gonna be paying for it and the road will be,
Very much so, yeah.
need to be redone again.
It's just an example.
If you go back to the reserve policy, there was a list of the reserves that were at the bottom on that last page too as well. So there is no reserve of $2.5 million. There's just an accumulation, but all of our reserves total are only 1.6. So there's not a pot of money based on those reserves that is earmarked solely for Development Road.
Typically, for a municipality this size, projects of that size almost always need external funding sources, so province, federal government, but they're all based on application.
Mhm.
And then there's no funding out there.
Well, and you did get a fair sized grant last year from the two biggest sources for the waterfront parks.
Doesn't help our roads, so.
Yeah,
Doesn't
there's
help the
very
roads.
little road or like for core infrastructure, other than what the federal gas, the federal government gives us through the federal gas tax, which is no longer called gas
Yeah.
tax.
Yeah,
But that allows us to use it for core, and the Ontario OCIF allows us to use it for core. But those are, they're not going to total up to 2.5 million. So they're not going to sustain what we need or be sufficient for what we need for Development Road.
And we still get the federal gas tax, that amount for the 126,200. Do we still receive that federal gas tax every year?
Yes, I have to confirm the number.
And do we anticipate we're going to get it a while longer? Or do you know?
Well, I'm certainly hopeful.
It's always been intended to be
Yeah.
ongoing. Most municipalities treat it as reliable still, but who knows?
Mhm.
Yeah, I realize
They-
that, yeah.
So there, yeah, I just can't wrap my head around that. There's been no money put aside for this project. Development Road.
I can't see the number. I can't see where there's been a transfer of money for that project. From when I've looked at anything, I mean, I've only been here a couple months,
Yeah.
but I'm not seeing any evidence of that.
I could. So our debt service cost is not to exceed 50% of our capital levy.
Mhm.
So when I look and I see principal debt payments for 23 through 27, that's just principal debt payments. That does not include interest? Or does that include the interest?
No, that's just to show you the principle, just to get some indication of your debt. At the end of the year, well, if nothing else is done, will come down by that amount. each
By that amount. So can somebody point me to where I can see our debt servicing costs compared to what 50% of our capital levy is and how
I didn't-
far away? we-
Unfortunately, I didn't get to that particular one,
Okay.
but my recollection is it shows you to be slightly better than the debt per household, but still, you know, so you're still, I think you're the middle of the pack in terms of
Mhm.
that. The concern is something like Castle Home, when that hits, it's over $100,000 added to your debt service costs.
Yeah, and how close does that bring us to the threshold of 50% where we can't, do you know? You don't, it's okay.
It depends on how much your tax levy goes up each year.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
as a percentage, so it's all relative, as I'm sure you understand.
Yeah, of course. I'm just trying to get a sense as to where is our maximum borrowing limit at this point to
Yeah,
satisfy principal and debt payment before we hit our ceiling.
What, I know I talked to the previous CAO about this, but when you get your asset management plan finalized, you'll have dollar estimates of capital costs for the next 20 years, 25 years.
Yes.
That can be used to put together a long-term financing and funding policy for capital to get some idea each year where you might be relative for that particular. You know, once you know what you should be spending each year
Mhm.
and you know your sources of revenue, the intent would be to get that capital levy up over time. It just, this was not a good year to try and do that, but that needs to grow substantially to get you to a sustainable capital funding level.
Right. And in your knowledge and years of experience, where's a healthy level of debt servicing ratio compared to capital? I know it's a maximum of 50%.
There is no, well, it isn't, it's not a maximum. It's again, it's a target level to measure where you stand. And it depends on a lot of all of the other factors. Depends on tax levy increases and assumptions about that in the future. It depends on interest rates. Most of the forecasts I've done in the past use 2% as a inflation factor. Well, inflation of capital projects for you this year and for the last couple of years has skyrocketed, as you know. You saw the impact that had in the city of North Bay for one project. It's
Right.
you have the same issue with the railroad.
Right.
So I think the question I'm trying to satisfy is where's the reasonableness in, as we look to, for moving forward with some projects, where's that comfort level stop where it's like, we are now, and I get the middle of the pack, I get all that, but
It's
I mean, at some point, we're sitting here pretty handcuffed from what I
Right.
see, not able to do some of the projects that our taxpayers or that I heard during when we were in an election, and we're sitting here with no money. Sounds like it'd be irresponsible to keep borrowing money if that's what we want to try and do. So it's putting us in a bit of a position that I'm trying to find out where's reasonable.
yes, I guess it's a question of how much the council is willing to accept. For instance, in your case, a 1% increase in tax levies, what, just over $30,000?
31,000, yeah.
So if you look at debt service costs are going to go up by 200,000, that's a 7% increase just to cover that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if that's what the wishes of the council and the taxpayers are, is we need to get the work done, that's what it's going to cost.
I think wish is the wrong word.
It's a necessity. It can't, we
Yeah.
can't leave it any longer. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been left so long now we're.
Okay, thank you.
And I see that the Castle Home really, that becomes our debt in 2025, right?
Possibly, I believe, yes.
Castle Home. And yeah, if they change things in their talks for the city, would we still have to, are we still committed to that 1.7 million?
As far as I
I
understand, we
believe
are,
so,
yes.
yes. I know of one municipality in the province that agreed to assume debt for Home for the Aged and got out of a long-term commitment for an annual levy, operating levy. But the province hasn't agreed to anything like that again since then. But so I think the agreement has been signed by the mayor, not you, but the previous mayor, that commits you to that amount. And I don't think the city of North Bay will assume all of that.
Yeah, this doesn't sound like a good deal.
I know I've only attended one meeting regarding Castle Home, and I know that it was regarding whether for the operating and whether the city of North Bay would be taking that over as opposed to a Castle Home board, and they've not come to a conclusion on that yet either.
No, and we did pass a motion to be part of those negotiations because apparently because the agreement had been signed, we were not part of the other municipalities, but we were asked to come in and to be part of that. And certainly if there's any opportunity for this to change, council signed the motion to come in with the other mayors or the other municipalities to see if definitely we don't want to be left out if there's anything that changes. I guess we can dream, but that's probably
Yeah.
all. But that's a pretty huge commitment for such a small municipality. That's my opinion.
And the paperwork that I've looked at to date, so it may be out there and I just haven't seen it. But I don't, until North Bay makes a decision on operating as well, I don't know the impacts of future year operating costs with the 4 municipalities who have left Castle Home. And that are, they're still obligated for the debt, but they're not for the operating. And I don't know when that starts and what that looks
No.
like. So that'll also be a future year consideration.
No. Any questions, Steve? Ben?
No.
My only question is, Mr. Rogers, do you have any good news?
Yes, let
Excellent.
me think about it. I think I was quite heavily involved with AMO in negotiations with the province when they were looking at who does what. And when the province took over more responsibility for social services. And Homes for the Aged were a big topic of discussion because they're viewed as having a lot of, it's part of the medical system almost. But they're just what the province just wasn't willing. If you look at all of the other municipal services and you look at Homes for the Aged and the costs for different municipalities, and they're all over the place. There's just, and this is the one thing that can affect it. when they first started negotiations with the province funding the expansion, the province set their limit on what they were going to pay and told the municipalities, if it goes over that, you've got to pay the balance, and that's part of what happened. For unfortunately, every municipality by law has to fund one home for the aged to be a part of. Good news, there's some growth in Bonfield that will help your allow for your tax levy to increase without impacting all the other taxpayers. So as long as there's growth, it will help down the road for sure. And I think the federal and provincial governments will come around and start funding more capital gain, because they all understand that it's a big problem, and the infrastructure deficits will just start to rise again if they don't step in. So, but they've got their own problems right now. So,
Yeah, it certainly appears that all of the smaller municipalities, I guess the larger as well, that you're not seeing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4% anymore. It goes higher than that, which it's understandable for everything costs so much now, but how much can we ask? How much can we ask for?
I did a quick poll of the area municipalities. And for 2023, Calendar's rate went up 7.6%. Nipissing's went up 4.5%. North Bay's was around 4.6%, and Chisholm's was 5%, and East Ferris was 9.7%.
So can I just ask on that, and I don't, maybe Mr. Rogers, this is a question for you, but if assessment growth was actually added into that with MPAC being frozen, like the 7 point, sorry, I forget the exact 7.6. Well, 7.6 wouldn't be 7.6 if the assessment growth had actually gone up and MPAC, it would actually be less than that, because the municipality would get the same amount of money, and it would be the same amount of money coming from taxpayers, but the 7.6, as all of the ratepayers lose their mind, because it sounds like a very high number, the reality is it's what they would have paid anyways. It would have just sounded like 3%, and 3% would have come from assessment growth, or 4%, wherever the math is. That
if there's ever a reassessment, you'll see the impact of if every taxpayer's assessment doubled, that doesn't mean their taxes are going to go up.
Right. That's what impact keeps.
The tax rate will go down.
right?
And
We could have negative tax
yes, you could theoretically,
and still,
but they're going to pay,
still have more
they're going to
money.
pay the same level of
Correct.
taxes unless their increase is more relative to the average increase. So
Right.
if you live in a neighborhood that's very popular and the market values have gone up more than another neighborhood, they're going to pay more.
Right. But I guess as we are gonna work to our number is gonna sound like comparatively to previous councils that could bring in a 2%, a 3%, and no tax increase. Well, they were receiving the benefit of an assessment growth increase.
Yes.
So zero isn't zero, but when we're now actually getting none of that, we're gonna be throwing out numbers that I'm hoping people will understand is equivalent to much less than what it would sounds much higher than it is compared to what it would have been if there was also the corresponding assessment growth, right?
So inflation has been on the rise, and I did have that one, maybe that would be a good time to talk about it, that one chart that spoke about the tax rates over the last 5 years and inflation and how that is factored in. So I think right now we're behind inflation at 8%, but even in this year, all of the municipal costs are still going to increase, but the province, in not doing the reassessment, has removed your revenue growth. So there is no new revenue coming in. But there's still all these higher costs. So that's why the number seems so much larger than
Right.
what it is.
Yeah, I was talking to Nikki before the meeting, but I wish somebody would calculate a municipal price index.
Oh,
because it's unfortunate. I mean, you don't buy much food. But things like gas prices have a bigger impact on municipalities than they do an individual. Because almost everything in the public works budget is affected by gas. I mean, asphalt prices skyrocketing. I mean, but there is, consumer price index is not a good measure for municipal expenditure increases, unfortunately.
They haven't even got to the hard stuff.
I know.
So are we ready to move on to the capital budget?
Yep.
I'm just trying to do double duty. I'm trying to share my, and it's not coming up, so just bear with me for a moment.
Because it hadn't been put into revenue.
Okay. So our capital budget, so this is mostly items that would be funded from those external sources, the different deferred revenue that we've already spoke about, or the debt in there. So our first item was for Parks and Recreation in the cemetery for a commercial zero turn lawnmower. And that's about 13,000. That will be funded from the Parkland Dedication Reserve. So the province, I'm sure that you've heard that they no longer, or they changed the rules on development charges. And part of the reason on that was because municipalities weren't spending that Parkland dedication or that money in there. So this is half of what that is in that reserve right now. So we would spend that and use that for parks and the cemetery for that. I think we heard today that it would be tight if we ordered it now in order to receive it by the end of the year. So it may be getting tight on that. Or we may have one that's exactly what we want and it's already in the store. So
What are the parameters on the Parkland Dedication Reserve? What can we spend that money on?
It's not development charges, so it's more like open space, and maybe I'll ask Mr. Rogers to help me on this. But it's
I don't
really-
believe there are any, as long as it's
Parks,
park
open space.
related.
So it may have
It's at
went.
the discretion of council, that one, I guess, in terms of when you use it and how much you use.
Mhm. This is what Parkland dedication fees, this reserve is built on when there's a consent, and there's 5% that's required from a consent. 5% of the value of the land before the consent goes into this Parkland dedication. So it helps to fund the growth in the community. So you have more new homes in one neighborhood, you might want to put a park in. So, but it's really about the open space and the use of everything. So the lawnmower would be to make our parks better.
Sorry, Your Worship, I think I asked a question. I didn't go through you. Can I have another one? Is that okay?
Sure.
Thank you. So commercial zero turn lawnmower. Like I'm trying to figure out, like, what do we currently use?
A zero steer lawnmower, however, it's 9 years old. And the person that purchased it, it wasn't really commercial. So we're trying our best to keep it alive.
And so a non-commercial one lasted 9 years. If we were to
Yeah.
buy non-commercial one again, how much is a non-commercial? And maybe it's not the right,
I just bought one, so I know.
Yeah.
We're not far off that number. So.
okay, fair
You
enough.
might as well step it up and go the extra $3,000.
Perfect. Thank you. We're on item 1. It's gonna be a long night.
We expect so. There's a lot of questions and a lot of
Yeah.
information in front of you, for sure.
So our asset management plan is actually going to help us with this, right? Like,
Yeah.
right. And if the asset management plan was done in 2013, are there not year-over-year adjustments to it? Like, are you not adjusting the asset? That's what it is, asset management on a yearly basis, which means that this year you're looking at new regulations, and now all you have to do is interpret those new regulations into a new asset management plan based on the information that you had last year, right?
I don't believe the asset management was updated annually, but
Right, so it wasn't a requirement in 2013. It was a dead document. So basically, every township or municipality had to get an asset management plan on the books, 2013. So there was lots of verbiage in that asset management plan that says to be determined. Not figures would be just sit there. There was never need to adjust all your figures in the 2013 asset management plans.
So that was never on anybody's work plan to figure out what the numbers were and to do that.
Right,
So
until recently, yes.
so municipalities have different accounting systems than what the private sector would have. And private sector already budgets for amortization. I don't know if they budget, but they already account for amortization and a number of other things that municipalities just never had to do. So in 2013, they started to change some of those rules. They may have done it before. I can't remember the exact. but
They
20
did, we did have an asset management plan
Yeah.
before.
So then the province changed the rules and they said, okay, now while we don't have to budget for amortization, because that would be detrimental to every single municipality, but they still want us to budget for those assets. So they came up with the first regulation in 2013. It didn't turn out exactly how the province wanted. So now we have a much more detailed. So by 2025, that's when we're going to be meeting a better asset management plan that will do that. Like for July of 2024, we all have to have our current value assessments done and how we're going to project those going into the future. So that's a decision that has to be done for July. So the province is getting there, but they have never mandated. So municipalities just didn't. Smaller municipalities, certainly, we didn't take that on.
I guess I just find it hard to believe that that's how you would budget, right? Like that's how you're supposed to figure out what you need the following year. So it's hard without a plan. So if there was
Exactly.
no plan,
But we're moving forward and we're getting that plan. Absolutely.
And
But
it'll
we're
be
starting from
dynamic and
scratch.
updated annually.
yes,
Yes.
Beautiful.
but we're starting from
Thank
scratch.
you. So the second item in the general administration is the Town Suite accounting software. So that's being funded through the Modernization Reserve Fund, which was a fund that was provided to municipalities from the province. And this is because our current accounting software, the software that we have for our taxes and everything else, it was a sole source and they are going out of business. So there's a number of municipalities who were affected by this. Actually, I think he's not going out of business because he's still a great system, but he's retiring. So we had to purchase a new system for that. And that is part of that. And then the next item under as well for Modernization Reserve Fund is a building permit software program. So it allows a lot more digital. So it's much more user friendly, easier to track. And that is that permitting system.
And that's what we got and that's what we've spent, right? That was
Right.
okay.
Mhm. Yeah, we don't have the permitting software for the building permits yet. So that'll be once we get approved. But Town Suite was RFP'd and decided last year.
Is the permitting software compatible with the Town Suites? Is it a component of Town?
Well, we don't have the permitting system yet. we would have to tender it, see which one we want to do.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know that.
Does
it would-
Town Suite have a module of
I'll check
permitting?
into that, yeah. Yeah. And then our next budget is, for the capital items are a number of public works ones. Where we end, but so we have Railway Street as a consideration, at 610, based on valuing out past quotes for that. Pine Lake gravel, that would be funded through the gas tax. And then the 1-ton truck, which is the capital levy, that 130,000 that we've talked about before, and it's in as a capital budget, but it's levied through the operating. And then we'll show you where that is on operating. And then of course the grader that's already purchased and it is being funded by debt. So at the bottom, you can see where, we're using those same numbers to come out to the same number to balance it. So that's our capital project, or our capital plan for 2023. Also for consideration in there is Development Road, whether it's an asphalt at 3.5 million or a chip seal at 2.5 million. And that, I don't know if those numbers have been updated based on new asphalt indexes or anything, so.
Yeah, I think we should also, Development Road, I think we should look at. I think Public Works Manager needs to present both cases to see what the best bang for our dollar is. How many kilometers we can get out there opposed to Railway Street. Like,
Opposed to Railway Street?
yes,
So development and not railway?
right. Let's see what see how many, if we can get, 4 kilometers out there compared to 600 meters here. I mean, the street, we're in a bad situation because they both need it bad. But where do we get the best bang for our dollar?
This rough quote for development, is it for all of development?
Yes,
From like whatever it is,
Edge,
Lake
edge.
Shore
yes.
to like past
Pleasant.
Banyas?
Yeah, there's no way we're doing all of one road at once. We got to get that out of our head. We're gonna have, development has to be done in sections. That's all we can afford.
Well, we don't have $3.5 million.
Right. So we're gonna have to break development up into sections and use whatever gas tax money, whatever funding we can get every year and do a section. I mean, that's my thoughts.
There's probably not a way around it. I think the challenge now becomes, we've done our capital management plan for 4 years. If it's gonna take us 4 or 5 years to pay for development. Like we've tied our hands for that long. Like, I don't know if we're better off to hold off waiting for provincial, to see where any provincial or federal dollars come for big projects like that. I think it's a tough call.
Right.
Because, I mean, there's so many roads that need attention, whether it's resurfacing with chip seal, gravel, new gravel programs. Gravel programs likely won't be paid for by provincial and federal governments. It's not fancy enough for them. But trying to get focus our efforts in advocating for funding for those projects.
Can I have a question? So I agree with Councillor McInnes, because we have to start, we have to start. And so we pick a road and we start, because if we don't, we can still simultaneously apply for funding and whatever. But if we don't start and we keep putting it off, all the roads will deteriorate.
Well, I mean, we're so far behind
Yeah.
on the infrastructure. It has been left so long that it's deteriorated past the point of no return.
Yeah.
Sorry, and just to be clear, it's not that I don't want to make the investment.
No,
When we're
Yeah.
talking bang for the buck, how many kilometers of a good gravel program can we do well, right?
right.
All of a sudden now we've done how many kilometers of our
Right.
really deficient roads while we wait for hopefully some help and assistance on kind of the bigger projects, right?
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it's all just for consideration. I'd
Yeah.
love to be able to, if we're gonna put $400,000 on the table, well, what do we want to spend $400,000 on, right? Like, we almost have to pick a number and work backwards, and what do we get for bang for buck,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, what did you, going back to, there's like 800,000 in reserves in the like gas tax, between all the gas tax and Nords and, right?
If you look at if you go back to the reserve policy sheet, the last page on that has what our 2022 end.
1.6, wasn't it?
So there's, on this page here, there's a list of all of our reserves, and that deferred income is at the
Yeah,
bottom.
1.6.
So the OCIF deferred income is at 52,000. The federal gas tax is at 629. The North is at 180. So in comparison to the capital budget on what we're saying, so the Nords, for Railway Street, if we just pick that $610,000, 270 of that was coming from Nords and 339 was coming from gas tax.
But is there anything left after that?
So gas tax right now is at 629, then we still have our 2023 allocation to go on that, so we'll be around 720. And if we take 333 from that,
So
we're
almost at
using maybe
900.
half.
Right, so what I'm getting at, potentially there's $900,000 of, between gas tax and Nords, right? So that's what I'm saying. One project or the other, what can we get the most kilometers? I mean, here we're talking 600 meters for $1 million. I mean, this road is bad, don't get me wrong, it is horrible. But it's not falling apart with potholes and the asphalt still, it's just rough. Development Road is completely falling apart. So we have to decide. We have to start somewhere. We have to get something going. We just can't keep sitting and saying it's too expensive. I mean, not us. I mean, that's what was done previously.
Are you talking, no, when you compared the asphalt or the chip seal? And you're saying doing a portion of the road? And I heard you a few minutes ago speak about the life expectancy of the chip seal. Would we not be better to do a portion of the road with the asphalt as opposed to go to a larger area with something that's not going to last? We see that on the roads now. There's big holes and big patches, and I don't know a whole lot about asphalt or chip seal, but I know that chip seal is not as good as the asphalt.
Yeah, I think you can,
And not for the sake of just doing something. I know that the people are expecting that we do something with the roads, but I can't agree with putting something there that just to repair the road. And how long is it going to last? We're just throwing in good money after bad.
well, I think if we're gonna do a section, we're gonna do it right. We're gonna dig out frost heaves and clean the ditches up so water flows better, so it's not saturating the road. Put a lift of A-gravel on, chip seal or asphalt, whatever we decide on. But I mean, if the base is there, chip seal will last. I mean, I kind of think when we come to intersections, if we do chip seal on the main stretch, when we come to intersections, pave that, because that's where the big trucks are turning and then ripping it up. So asphalt will take the abuse. Just a thought down the road. I mean, what, 7 years for chip seal?
Yeah, 7 to 8 years. And then we have to do another coat.
And then asphalt is,
15, let's be realistic, for Northern Ontario.
right. So you're doubling, with asphalt, you double the life expectancy. But it's also a lot more money.
Yeah.
Do we have a traffic study at all on Development Road, like traffic counts?
We have an old one, and like we spoke at the Public Works meeting, the Blue Sky Net just started offering the new traffic counter. And we did decide in Public Works and Council that we're doing a traffic study this year, which also coincides with the asset management plan.
So then we would have data to rely upon if we're gonna look at sections of development, and even if it's a hybrid between asphalt, which needs to last longer because it's a higher trafficked area versus chip seal. If you're down one end to the other and the traffic count is way down, well, maybe chip seal, the life, like we'll get full life expectancy. And in the highest traffic areas, and perhaps even on the intersections, you look at asphalt, and maybe at that point it's too convoluted, I don't know, but.
Well, I guess what I'm saying sections, I'm not saying do this jump. I'm saying like, we're gonna start at 0.0, ground zero, and then we're gonna do 4 kilometers, let's say 4 kilometers. And then the following year, we start from there again and do whatever we can afford. Keep working our way down the road till we get it done. I mean, yeah.
Well, then we start on a different road.
Yeah,
No, I get it, but we don't have the money to do a full-on construction of the whole thing.
I also feel like if we start at ground zero, I mean, maybe it's just my travel path and I'm underestimating the amount of traffic, but I think further you go down towards Calvin, I can't imagine the traffic counts anywhere close to what it would be. It's closer towards,
But-
Grand Desert Road.
But the road is the worst down that end. Like, and
Right.
so
Up on the other side of the 4 corners, up that way.
yeah,
It's very bad too, just before you get to the Ruther Glen line,
yes.
that
that's-
area
yes.
there, just before Farmer's Line.
Right,
that-
right.
Yeah, it's
So we pick
terrible there.
the worst area and start
Well,
there.
so, I think the best thing to do, so, if the section of road doesn't need much work, we're gonna
Not
grind it
Yeah.
and gravel it but go down to where we can afford. And if there's a dig out in that section, we dig it out. And then, we stop here, like we're at kilometer 4, let's say, that's what we can afford.
Yeah.
So they grind it all after you do your dig outs and ditching, and then you add gravel and chip seal it, pave it.
Yeah, because I think waiting for study after study after study and doing nothing.
Because
Right.
there is a couple sections, very small sections that don't need much attention. So you don't have there's no real expense there except for grinding and a little bit of gravel and chip seal or asphalt. Like I said,
So I heard that you wanted to have the public works manager do a report,
to see what the,
and then, so is there a number in mind, knowing that, we don't want to deplete our deferred revenue? But is there a number in mind for us to base that report on?
I would think we go with the 600,000 we have slated out here.
For railway.
Where, between the two, where are we gonna get the best bang for a dollar?
And in today's dollars, right? Like I want it
Yes.
in like, okay.
As opposed to yesterday.
Well, as opposed to 2 years ago, basing off an estimate we got 2 years
Yeah.
ago, which
Right.
is nowhere close to what
Mhm.
we'd be paying today, right?
I mean, I
That
guess,
goes to speak to that municipal index that we need.
Yes,
Right,
yes.
100%.
I guess we just need a couple options to fall back on.
Excellent. Okay.
Can I ask Dan? Dan, you're just thinking about Development Road,
Yeah.
or are you still thinking about Mark Street or
I'm kind of thinking about both. Let's, like I said,
Railway Street? Sorry.
yeah, I'm thinking of both. Let's see where we can get the best value for a dollar.
And how many kilometers of a good gravel program can we get? Just
Right.
to compare.
Yeah, no,
Right.
Railway Street. There's concerns I read about having to dig out the street. When they put that fire hall in there, the soil was very bad. They had to dig it all out. They had to dig everything out. They thought they were in better shape than what they were, but they had to dig it all out because of what the soil that was there. And that's very close to Railway Street as well, right?
And then you know, and it shows in the road. It's the same
Yeah.
material. It's clay. It moves, it heaves.
That's probably why they had to
Right.
dig it all out, eh? Wow,
Yeah.
That's why that's why the cost is so inflated out here, because out of 900 meters, we're gonna dig 600 of it out because it's clay. To do it right.
yeah,
I mean, there's no sense just spend the money on very expensive asphalt to have it heave the next year.
that's right. So your suggestion, you would like Anne to come up with a firm price on all of these?
Yeah.
Or quote on all of these?
I asked that our public works meeting change. Because I should be preparing tomorrow for our public works meeting. I don't know if I can get that all together by
Yeah.
Wednesday,
It doesn't have to be tomorrow. I mean,
but I would
It's a big-
assume
it's
the
a-
council would like to get the tendering.
oh, 100%. I mean, I would like to have gone out 2 months ago, but
Right,
yeah, you want to change the date, change it. I mean, I know it's a lot, so
Okay.
change it to whatever accommodates your schedule.
okay, thank you.
Not October.
No.
We want to have the budget done
Same.
quicker. Yes. So the other item that was in the public works is the Pine Lake gravel. So that was also 250 of the gas tax. So remembering that we only have about 720 gas tax, we were using 339 for railway development, whichever that report comes back. The other 250 was for Pine Lake gravel. Do we want to move forward with that? Do you want that to be part of the report? How do you want to?
I think the gravel program is pretty straightforward. I think we just stick with that gravel program. I mean, I don't
Like
know.
for Pine Lake Road?
Yes,
Yeah, I think
If we-
I'm comfortable with doing, like Pine Lake Road has been on the books for quite some time, so keep that separate.
Right.
And then the 6,
right.
maybe it'll turn into more gravel program, maybe it'll turn into railway, maybe it'll turn into part of development.
One of the things that was mentioned to me at the meeting the other night, housing meeting, that when the municipality is doing the repairs in the gravel on Pine Lake Road, the first portion of the road, it's partly pavement and it's partly gravel and it's partly holes and partly bumps. The question that was posed to me was, why don't you guys either take that out and put gravel in there or put pavement? It's a real mess, and that mess has been there for a long, long time. And I don't know if you would like to look at it or see what you think. I don't know what it would entail to tear that pavement out that's there, the patches of pavement, and there are holes in there as well, because I was down there not too
That's
long
like
ago.
cold patch over top of cold patch
I
over.
mean, to me, I would suggest just turn it to gravel. It runs into gravel anyways, right?
Yes.
So
There's maybe 4 residents, 5.
Is that on top of this 250?
It would be,
but you don't
but
have to
it's not
do
very
much,
large.
right? So you rip,
You rip that
there's
out.
no real cost taking that chip seal off.
Right,
I mean, we don't need to get a pulverizer and rip it off with the,
We have a scarifier,
Right.
actually.
the grader will take it off.
okay,
And
Oh,
then
yeah.
just.
you haul it away and then you just put.
Well, no, you don't,
so
if you scarify it, you could
You just
actually just
turn it.
work it into the gravel, like
Oh, and then just add more gravel on
add
top?
some more gravel on top and.
How many kilometers is that?
It's not even a.
It's not even.
No.
Oh,
Just
So-
when you go down the
so
hill.
it's in
We
the
could work it
margins on
into-
the 200.
We could work it into that 250, because it's
Right.
not gonna take up much gravel.
Okay, that's good news.
Sounds good to me.
If I can, was it paved because the hill would wash out?
Yeah.
Okay.
But is it on the hill though, that section?
Well, it comes down, the hill is freshly paved. You
Right,
get into the one corner, and as soon as you swing out into that corner, you're on chip seal.
But that's where the mess is,
Yeah,
right?
the
That's
little
where all
messes
the
between
holes
there
are.
and the
Yeah.
bridge.
Yeah, that's all we need.
Well, you go on it every day,
I
so
do,
you,
So-
there's a lot of holes.
I was out there last night that
Mhm.
way, and yeah, it looks low. That seems to me the
Mhm.
water sits there. That's why
Yeah.
the road's all breaking up. It needs a grade raise
Mhm.
to come up, and then
Then you would have to do some driveway adjustment.
what,
Yeah.
that's minimal, right? I mean, I'd like,
So how about we put
It's up-
that on the report too?
yes,
for
it's up,
discussion?
it's your call, it's your.
I would do it as a separate. Get the other one. And then the other two items, the grader's already been purchased under Public Works, and then the 1-ton truck, we know that we need to replace the one as soon as possible because it's not running very well.
I need a sending unit, so we'll see if we can buy one.
I mean, yeah, I come in and talk to you, you said the money was allocated already to it, so yeah, I'm fine with it, but like, without seeing a budget, I just, you know, the money, if the money's already in the budget, that's,
That's our next item on the agenda, is go through the budget to show you that.
Great.
Okay. So we'll get the public works manager will work on those reports. Capital,
You don't need this other report then?
I would see.
yeah, well, that report was dedicated to Railway
Really,
Street
Mark.
and the quote from previous years at 610 and inflated out to the most recent one at over $1 million, right? So
So I have a couple questions if that's okay.
Sure.
So just on this report, so this project was introduced to the township on February 4th, 2020. Was it approved at that time?
No, it wasn't.
It
This was
wasn't.
a discussion, budgetary estimates.
Okay,
So just like we did with the Public Works Committee, we brought forward a few projects and we discussed them and then we got budgetary quotes for them.
okay,
Right,
So
so that was
then-
the budgetary quotation for that project in 2020.
okay.
And then we add the inflationary costs, which has been crazy over the last few
Right,
years, like
right.
Mr. Rogers has
So
said.
it's parting. So then in 2021, there was the Nords funding, but then did it go back to council? Was it approved in 2021?
No, it was not. It was approved for the application for Nords to be used for that. So the council had to say and sign off on the funding that, yes, we are going to enter into an agreement for this funding. This is the approved project due to the aggregate or mining or forestry that comes across that road. However, those items can be amended.
because Development Road sees a lot of aggregate travel too.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
So,
So we got that funding, but then, but nothing was done.
No, the plan was at the time is because you're getting in around 90,000-ish a year. So you're allowed to save that for 5 years. So if you save the 5 years worth of Nord's funding, you're able to do a project without debt or use that and go in debt however council deems to use it.
So nothing was approved in 2021. So was that the plan? Was that the explicit plan to
For
save
Nord's
up?
funding, it was to save that funding for the 5
And
years.
was it allocated then? The 5-year funding was allocated to Railway and Mark Street? Yes.
It's allocated, but not council decided as a capital project, if you know what I mean.
we have to do an annual report on the Nords to say where that funding is going.
Yeah.
So the direction is that would be where it's going. So if we wanted to change the Nord funding to go to development or to a gravel program, then we would have to send in the request into the province.
Yes.
And then 20,
go ahead, no.
2022, the cost increased again.
Mhm.
And then what was done in 2022?
2022, it still was not used, as I did mention. I believe that council at the time was hoping to kind of put that money to the side for the 5 years.
As the
And
roads
then use it.
exponentially got worse, right?
Well, just
And the
to
cost.
build the
Yeah.
funding. Uh,
But the longer you wait, yes, the cost goes up and
Yes.
the roads get worse. So
Yes.
you're playing catch up. We'll never catch up
Right.
unless we start.
So to me, spend the money, we know it's coming, let's spend it. You know.
Yeah.
That's up to us.
Get something
but
done.
Yes, spend the money and put it as debt, but we have that money coming in every year, we just pay the debt off.
Okay, so no tenders, no council approval. Thank you.
Just watching Mr. Rogers say, see if you had any hemorrhage there. Yeah.
Oh, there was also something in the report from, I guess, the engineer about paving the shoulders. We don't pave shoulders.
No, we
right?
do not. However, we did actually apply for a grant to do some sidewalk work, excuse me. Which is part of the vibe word, I guess I will say, since COVID hit, active transportation. It puts you in a different category, sort of.
Okay.
So if you call it active transportation as opposed to a paved shoulder,
Uh,
right, there would be other ways of funding sourcing those items.
And we are part of the Voyager Trail. and
yeah,
Right.
yeah, okay.
A number
okay.
of things that we promote active
Mhm.
transportation, so
Right.
this would make that safety hazard as well.
Right.
Okay. Right, and so this was a 2020 budget
Right,
estimate, so
yes.
that's out the window.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councilor McGinnis. did you have something?
No, I'm just clear my throat. No, I mean,
No,
I'm sorry.
no.
Are we ready to move on to the operating budget? So the operating budget, I'll go through the top page, just this first page here for the summary for council. And then I did also give you a copy of the summary of major changes from where we are for the, so overall, I mean, our revenues, I'm just gonna make sure we're all on the same page. We're all on the summary page, that top 2023. We have the actuals from 2019 to 2020, 21, 22, and then the budget for 22 and our budget for 2023. Then, and then that's the difference between the 2022 and 23 on the next column. So our revenues up until that first line, I think I have the 75,000 highlighted for you, but those are the revenues under general, from general government. So, or they're not in general government. So, the financial revenues is a calculation from the general government when we get, if you went to that development budget. The grants, the one I really want to talk about is the transfers from reserves. So you can see over the last few years, there has been a reliance on that, the reserve and you're budgeting to use reserves every year where we should be trying to, you know, it's
Yes.
only meant if there's something in the year that's unexpected or there's just a major concern or major project, right, that we need to kind of get into that to stabilize the taxes. So I would like us to see us decrease that over the next 4 years. So we're not relying on that revenue.
So who, like, is that not on the auditor to say if this is wrong? Or
It's up to council. and
It's
how
not
you-
wrong. It was a
Yeah.
political decision of
Yeah.
the council of the day to use revenue to make themselves look better with a lower tax rate. Too fine of a point, sorry.
And going back to 31,000 is 1% of a tax
Yes.
increase. So this is 2%
Correct.
of a tax increase, but and that's why we didn't change it this year. And I'm not recommending changing it this year because we are trying to play that catch up from the, you know, we're behind 8% already. Even as it is today, it still leaves us 5% behind. So, but we need to catch up and we need to start to reduce our reliance on reserves.
That was what Mr. Rogers told us, right? That over 4 years, you wean yourself off that to put back in. So I'm sure you've said that every year, so,
So far.
yeah.
Hopefully we're able to do it next year. So then if we get into general government, our major changes on that, we do from our council expenses, we've gone down about 10,000 in benefits, but we have increased about 9,000, and that's very typical again
So did
for.
we get benefits as council members? What was that expenditure for?
No,
last
the
year?
previous, there were some benefits allocated in the previous years,
Because-
but that changed. I
Is
believe-
that normal?
I can't speak to it. I don't know the complete background.
Is that normal?
It was normal for the last council.
Okay,
Not all of council.
Right, the mayor received some benefits. Yes. So that has been reduced. And then typical for the first term of council, there is some training, there's conferences, so there are some increases in those expenses for council. Under administration, they're still under general government, there's 26,000 that was increased for the salaries for administration. We are back up to our full complement for admin staff. With the hiring of the CAO, our full-time and our part-time office clerks. So that is allocated in there as well.
So just to pause though, this isn't, well, this is reflecting in a budget. It's not net new positions. These were previously designated positions that are now just being filled.
Correct.
Thank you.
and so that's under the general government line?
Yes, I'm giving, like, you have the summary sheet
Yes.
here, and then under each of the departments, the pages after each of those departments. I'm just summarizing the things that have drastically changed from those department budgets.
Okay, so sorry, on the first page, then the first line under general government, which includes the salaries, had like a 5.7 increase, which is small.
Right.
Okay, and that included the staff, because they were
Yes.
already budgeted for, so it's,
Well, they weren't in the past budget because we're just up to the full complement, which is why it's more this year.
oh,
Right.
so it wasn't gapped then, or?
Yeah, there'd be a year more, I believe, where we did not have full staff.
Yeah, so that's all gapping money
Yes.
then, okay.
Also in general government, there's about 19,000 that is increasing for the computer support. There was computer testing of the SITSUB that was already approved and done for 2023. There was a purchase of one new computer for the CAO because there was no computer. And then the license for the town suite was much different than what it was for Baker. So our old software program, our annual fee was about $3,700, and now we're up to about $9,000 per full and that's just for half a year from July to December. So next year, expect that will increase to the full, and it's at $21,000 a year. But that won't come in until later.
Your worship. Last question.
Sure.
Can you explain the computer testing to me? Because the last time I recollect anything about computer testing, does this have to do with the cyber?
Yes.
Did we, when you say that it was previously decided, are you talking this council or a previous council? Because when I remember having a conversation, and I would have to go back in the records, I don't remember, maybe we proved it.
It was
But-
$5,000.
Yeah, we were essentially approving money for the company who we are paying to do cybersecurity to test their work on our computers,
To test for any holes in our systems, yes.
that we are paying them to not, to close the holes in our computers. Am I oversimplifying? Please help me. Like, I'm just, because
No,
it doesn't
really,
add
that
up
is
in my
what it
head.
was, yes.
Thank you.
But I don't think they did all of the applications. I think like the Public Works application isn't under it. There was a few maybe minor things that weren't under it,
It
but
was like, basically, they tested the system to see how it could be hacked.
yeah. it's-
So for instance, it had nothing to honestly do with software that they provide us or anything to that measure. For instance, we had cameras on our outdoor skating rink that could be hacked through.
That they
back into
weren't
the
in
system.
control of.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's anything outside, but
Yeah.
we're hoping that the stuff that they provided for us is
Yes.
not hackable,
Yeah.
right? So,
And let's make sure. And another result that came from that testing was that there was a VPN that got closed as well, because that was open, so anyone could have come in that way.
but
So
yeah,
there were some
That is
good
high, though.
solutions that came out of that testing.
but that number seems high, because I don't know
The
that,
actual testing was only $3,200.
okay.
It came in under budget.
But what's the 19?
So
is that
most of that is in from Baker.
Okay,
From our software. There's also increases on the next line as well for the internet, because we now use Starlink for internet. And we actually have internet here now.
okay, so there's no GLs here so that there's no numbers that I can refer to, right? There's no GL numbers, so I don't know how you code your GLs, but so under, I don't know, office supplies, furniture and equipment for $17,000, it says internet phone supplies. So that's the Starlink?
Yes, the
Oh.
difference in there, yes. is-
Okay, but then just above that, there's telecommunications. So what's telecommunications? Is that phones?
Yes, in your iPads. The telephone system here,
But so our iPads are a one-time deal, right? For the next 4 years, and it's up more than 50%, right? Or the actual in 2022 is 5, and now the budget is 10.
I can go and get the stuff, but I can come back with on what that one. is.
Okay. Just there's a lot of, right, so we know that the new software, the computer support and supplies, that's the Baker stuff, the 52, right?
Right,
Okay, so that's the new software. So I guess what would be helpful is that there's a lot of IT stuff, right? There's a lot of IT stuff that it's confusing because you don't know what it is and
And
it's
they're in
all kind of
different
in,
counts. as well.
Right.
yeah.
So-
they're
It's not,
all-
where's the grand total of
Yeah,
IT?
yeah,
Right. So it's slated to have an entire review of IT in 2023. It's on the list that we have to go through and look at everything that we do. It comes down to some of that is, the monthly charge for the emails. And the monthly charge for our Zoom, for the programs that we use. So
Right.
all of that is going to be reviewed.
Yes.
And I just don't have that fulsome number
yeah,
to
yeah.
say, because it is through a number of different.
So we
accounts.
need some kind of an analysis
Right,
on that
yes.
and a cost benefit.
Right, and that's slated for
Especially if
2023.
we've got outdated things for the website,
Mhm.
things like that. And then I don't think there's a cost for social media. So because we
No.
want some kind of social media program to come up, right?
Right.
So,
Mhm.
okay. What is AMP and related training?
That's the asset management plan. So we did receive some funding for some asset management plan. It's in the budget. We were actually just received word about it last week, I believe. So it's a total project cost of 42,000. The revenue for it is in the top under FCM funding for the AMP, for the AMP, 33,840. So it's a $42,000 project. The remaining 88,000 some is part of our share, but the full cost gets allocated down to the expense.
That is sweet.
Yes, it's great. Yes,
Mhm.
congratulations to Anne and the previous mayor who put that all together. Sorry, Public Works Manager.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It took a while to be responded to.
Mhm. Yeah, we really do think at the beginning. And then, of course, insurance went up about 13,000. We've lowered some building repairs and the maintenance costs for here. That's gone down. But essentially, the overall change in the general government is 32,415. And that's just bringing in new revenue and or new funding, and then trying to reduce the cost as much as we can, where we can.
And that's where our new truck is coming from too.
Yes, you'll see a line about halfway down, PAYG, which is now called the capital levy. And that's $130,000. So you can see over the years, it's always been in the budget. It's always been an allocation.
Thank you for changing that name.
Yes.
What's the 20,000? Is it 20,000 for audit, the audit note?
So that is for the audit. That's our cost for the audit
Okay,
to
okay.
be completed.
And is it completed?
No.
Does the Like, do we give them?
We have a meeting with them tomorrow morning.
Okay, and do we give them in our RFP, is there like stipulation on timelines?
I think, well, there are set by the province. So by May 31st, we have to have certain things into the province. If it's not due by September, if you're late by September, then there's still some ramifications for that, or consequences from the province on that. So certainly most auditors work toward that September deadline. And but I can tell you every municipality is in the same boat. Every auditing firm, they're having a hard time finding the staff as well, in order to do.
They
I can
are.
tell you that's a real thing.
I know,
Yes.
but how is it that a lot of municipalities get to pass their budget months earlier than our municipality? That's what I don't understand then.
Yeah, and we'll be changing how we do that.
Is that, are we reliant on the audit? Mr.
So
Roger?
some municipalities do pass their budget before their audit is done, based on estimating what those levies are going to be from your third parties, your agency boards and committees. So they do pass before that. Smaller towns tend to wait until the audit, so you can know your last year prior to, because if there's a deficit, you have to budget for that deficit in the next year. Right. So, but again, if we can start to reduce that reliance on the reserve, that's part of what that. will pick
I mean,
up.
I think we need to make it a priority to
Mhm.
like get on the auditor RFP out for a new one, and we want it,
Yeah, maybe-
stipulate right in there, we want it to be one of the first.
Or I,
But we really don't have that
Yeah,
say.
no,
yeah.
but I-
Every
That's not a
municipality
reality.
wants to be
I know, but
first.
I
But
don't
we
want it
want
in
on the plan.
November.
But I
Yes.
think that there are certain items that if they address certain items, then we can move forward without them finalizing the budget. So I think that we need to, am I right?
Please.
Part of the problem this year was short staff for much of last year. And really, there was nobody with a financial background available.
And what was the problem last?
I was gonna say, we can use that one for this year, but the
Yes,
past
in the
4
future.
years, it's
Yeah,
been
because it was
November
like
before you see a
August
budget.
last year.
It had nothing to do with the audit, though.
Well, whatever it was, I don't want to be stuck like that again.
We're
'Cause-
July 1st.
And we don't have a budget, and we don't have tenders out because of it.
Yeah.
The auditors are more than just auditors for a lot of small municipalities, including Bonfield. They actually do a lot of the year-end work. And this year, I spent some time with your staff sorting out those type of issues so that they can do a lot of the year-end work before the auditors come in. And basically, the auditors just audit,
Perfect.
because now they also do year-end accounting.
Right.
And they have for several years, and they do that for a lot of small municipalities where they take on two functions: one, finalizing their financial records,
And closing year.
and two, auditing them. And that's not the best position to be in. So I
So
spent some time with staff this year at year end. And
did this happen last year?
it's
though?
been that way for,
It has, okay.
there hasn't been a anyone with financial background on staff for about 3 years now. There used to be a part-time finance clerk. He left about 3 years ago now, I
Yeah,
believe.
before COVID.
And there's been nobody with that expertise. And BDO did complete a study, I don't know whether you've had a look at it, of
Mhm.
For that.
I don't know that you've seen that.
they did a study about
2021.
that basically set out some recommendations for staffing. There just hasn't been the ability to,
Did that go to the
the
previous
numbers.
council then?
Yes.
So
I know the mayor, I don't know all of them.
Okay.
So the treasurer titles, we've had a treasurer, it's been in title only due to the municipal act and requirements.
it's a requirement of the municipal act. to have
Correct,
a
so it's been in
treasurer.
title only, we haven't truly had a treasurer.
That would be a fair statement.
Is there,
But there has been a part-time person.
right, is there a my recollection of the municipal act is there is no standard set forward for treasurer within the municipal act. It is just a treasurer listed in the municipal act. There's no minimum qualifications that are required.
Not qualifications, but there are
Expectations.
3 or 4 set roles that they have to fulfill.
There are things that they must do,
Mm.
and but basically, there's nothing that sets up the
Thank you.
qualifications.
But in saying all of that, Mr. Rogers has agreed to help me at this year and to make sure that all of those things are also getting done, right?
I've had 3 CAOs that I promised that to.
Hey, you're gonna be busy then.
Uh, Believe me, I'd like nothing better than see your budget passed in at least
You got it.
January or February at the latest.
Yes.
I was
Not in
thinking,
July.
March at the latest.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, don't set the standard too high.
March. March.
No,
I
I
would
I
like-
like your thinking.
yeah,
No.
yeah.
You just
Go big or go home.
Capital budget in November, December might be
Yes,
really
Yes,
nice,
yes,
but
sure.
for sure.
We're
Well,
gonna
that's
shoot
in
for the
our-
moon.
yes.
That's where we went.
Yeah.
Much easier to finish, to get accuracy with the budget when the year's 3/4 over,
Yeah,
Yeah. no
Yeah.
kidding.
but that's definitely not a good position.
Especially
Right.
when,
I'm sure that
when
will
what
change.
we're gonna be passing on to taxpayers in a very short amount of time to collect is gonna be significant. I think that's where it becomes difficult for taxpayers is they're paying equal payments, and sometimes some taxpayers do that. And then all of a sudden, in the end, you're making up for, you're paying the
yeah.
7% increase in the last
Yeah, it's
6
quarter,
months, that's right.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And I know there's miscellaneous here, like no auditor likes to see miscellaneous on there, but why is there a miscellaneous?
I think every department typically
But
has
we don't-
miscellaneous for things that are just not going to fit within.
Huh.
Yes, but we have reduced it from the 7,000 to the 3,000.
So what would?
And
go
I
into
just need time to
miscellaneous?
get a better handle on
Okay,
what goes in there, what is that for,
yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah.
because we don't want a miscellaneous.
Yeah. Mm.
We don't want a
So-
miscellaneous.
Our next department budget would be the fire department budget. And in that, again, fire departments don't have a great deal of revenue. Well, they don't have much revenue at all, but we are,
I have a question.
okay.
I'm sorry, I've got a question. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, so, revenue for fire would come through contracts when they are required or asked by organizations to attend whatever event or function that they are having, correct?
Yes,
And,
it could be.
and there is a standard hourly rate for resources, for assets that we can provide. So I think that there is opportunity for us, maybe not this year, but I think maybe if we do a standard contract for fire, that if they are going to be at any event that's not town related, we can actually be generating some revenue for that. And it's all in the guidelines, right? I think it's the NFPA or it might be in the municipal act, I don't know, one of them, that stipulates the actual hourly rate of the assets. And so I don't know that from a township point of view, we want our assets going out without, it's part of the asset management plan too, because whatever they're charging goes back in because we have to replace this equipment, right? So
Yes,
I'm
do
done.
we charge when like windstorms, power lines down, fire departments out? Are we charging hydro for like,
We've not collected any revenue for that.
I mean, that's something that you can bill hydro for that stuff. I mean, at an hourly rate, just for as long as you sit there.
Yeah. and
Not to my knowledge, we've done that. I haven't seen anything. And there's programs for if they actually respond to a fire through the insurance, like
Yes.
Fire Marquee, where you can recoup the expenses as well. So,
Right.
and you can see that from the 2022 budget. There were some expenses that were unplanned. That $6,500 was unplanned, and that was for sand and gravel for their to fix a property that had burnt down, so,
What, 60 in revenue?
no, sorry, in expenses. The second one down is under the M&R agreement
Oh, yeah,
expenses,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
6,500 in there. But if we had the fire marquee program or that type of program, then
Yeah.
that could be recouped.
Yeah, and again, I
If they
think
had insurance.
maybe, I don't know if you need a policy or something about organizations that are requesting that the fire department be at their event, that they now have to enter into a contract and that it's a paid duty is really what it is, right? It's paid duty with stipulations that if there is an emergency, they have to go, all of that, right? I'm sure that there are boilerplate standard contracts out there, but I think that we're not
I'll
capitalizing
definitely
on
look
that.
into that.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes, I would like to see a policy and a draft policy on that, only for the fact that I think we also have to be respectful that one of the fire department's job is to also promote the fire department and the work that they do, and how they do that is being in the community. So whether they're trying to garner members or whatever great other community work they're doing. So to turn everything that the fire department does into revenue generating, I think we're losing opportunities for promotion, and perhaps we can find a balance in the policy, but I don't think everything turns to revenue generating.
So you lost me too on when we paid to fix up a property that burned down. And what situation would that be?
I would
Okay.
think sanding, because it gets icy from the fire department, is in the wintertime. So there's pickled sand, sanding the driveways.
Yeah, that would have been,
No?
that would have been. I know in the account, it is for sand and gravel, that was for fire on Maple.
Was that fatality fire?
During the winter? Like,
Yeah, I'm not sure when that was, or.
Election day.
But we did have to, but I'm not sure why it wasn't 3 months.
It was election day. There was no snow.
When we talk about if the fire department attends somewhere, that we should, you're saying we should be charging for them going there if they're there for the purpose of for safety. What is the service we're providing to the taxpayers? Or what should we be requesting to be paid for? How do you differentiate on either one or the other? Like, what is the service of the fire department to our municipality? And when should they not be there unless they're paid? That's my question.
And I think the program that we're going through for the community risk assessment, the result of that is going to be a review of the establishing bylaw for the fire department, and that sets out what the service is of the fire department.
Okay.
So what do we respond to? It might come down to, if a daycare needs an inspection in order to get their license for a daycare, maybe that's something that is, there's a fee to it, but that's all spelled out in the bylaw.
Because if they attend a fire, the residents' insurance also pays the fire department, right?
If we have the program, we do not have that program in place right now.
Okay. Good.
So that's fire revenue. The only revenue that is in there is really for the rental from the post office. So then there's in all of the expenses, so some of the major changes in there are the firefighter training. So we do have more firefighters who are post promotion or post probation, and they're now on to the NFAPA regulation and the training that needs to be completed by 2026. So the province has come out to say that every firefighter shall be trained to a certain standard by 2026. Because we have more firefighters now, we are able to train them, so there's an increase in that. As well, there's an increase for the points, a 3% increase in the points. So it only works out to like under $2,000. It's not huge. And then in the previous year, some benefits were not picked up, because you'll see that on for that for their wages and benefits and points that's in there, you'll see that there was a change, it was over from last year, and that was because the benefits were not picked up in the budget, so they have been put into this year's budget as well. There's supplies for our new radio, for some bunker gear. I believe that's come through some minutes in the past to council. So propane increase for under the 3,600, and I think that's under building.
Again, there's 2 telecommunication lines in here as well.
Yes, very confusing.
Yeah.
Some are for the trucks, the radio, the trucks, and what you need for the trucks, and then some are for phones.
Right.
So
Okay.
yes,
So
with
what
radio
about-
licenses. and
We just,
everything.
are we gonna change the wording like radios to tele, and just, you know, it cleans it up.
Yes. Yeah, you can do that. There's a line for. Yeah, like I said, there is a line right in there for propane. And that rate, it seems there's a rate increase throughout all of the municipal buildings that we do use propane. Down for the buildings, we did do a difference on that 7,100. There's a furnace repairs and lighting that was done to station number 1. And then another major increase of 13,300 for the brakes on the pumper and an engine replacement. So those are necessary repairs that need to be done this year as well.
Are we anticipating anything from the risk assessment? Any expenditures from the risk assessment?
Only in wages, and that's under emergency management. That's under the next budget. So that is the fire department. So then I can move, if there's no more questions in there, I can move into the emergency management, which is the next one. And that is where you'll see the community risk assessment. It is just, it just requires staff time to do that and to attend the community meetings, get the work together, collect all the data. So it is in there. And then of course, under emergency management, you'll see that we also have slated for a new computer.
Yeah.
Under that same line, emergency management, that's also where we do all of the monthly generator checks, and that's where it gets charged to as well. Then the evacuation center expenses, they stay pretty much consistent. And that's just a monthly amount that we pay. So they're, yeah, under emergency management, I mean, the total change is 25,000. 500. Building departments, the major changes in there, the entire department changes 41,930. Under the wages, you'll see that that's where there's a bigger change. Some of that is building or bylaw enforcement, so should technically be under general government. So that can change, but we do want to have the building wages reflected in the building department.
How many staff is that? 2?
1. There's other staff under planning. And when you get the wages, it's their entire, it's the cost to the municipalities. to
Yeah,
have
it's
that.
fringe as well. So it's about 23-25%, right?
There is some more in there. Yeah, so there's major, I think those are the major changes.
Only 1 telecommunications.
No radios for them. Yes. The car expenses in there as well. You'll see that there's legal, and I don't think there's anything that is drastically changed. The next budget is animal control, which, I mean, there's a difference of $125. It's
I have a lot of questions about that.
Thank you for that. In policing, again, the overall change is only about $2,500, and there were 3 members of the Police Services Board who attended a conference. So really, that's where that change comes in. The OPP contract, it's listed here in the budget as well, but it is in the charts that you'll see later on that they are in the agencies, boards, and committees as well. So, but it's allocated here. And then we move into Public Works. The overall change there is about $100,000. So we've removed, again, we're trying to get away from relying on some of the reserves and deferred revenue as natural basis of revenue in this. So we have removed the 30,000 in automatic gas tax, which typically just goes in. You'll see in previous years, it's been 50,000. Last year it was 50,000 for gas tax, but it actually was used by OCIF. And that was for a lot of the work that was done, I believe, on Development Road. Or did you?
The collards and stuff.
Yeah, so we've removed that 30,000, added 21,000 from the OSIF, because again, OSIF is much like NORDS, where you're only allowed to keep it for 5 years and then you don't spend it. So we're at the 5-year mark for 21,000, so we're putting it into the Public Works.
So that is that the bridges and culverts 10,000 then?
No, I put that 20,000 into the gravel so we could start the gravel program.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I also under the revenue, there was money from the plantation. There was 32,000, which based on what we said earlier, any one-time lump sum payments should go into the reserve. So, and I can certainly put this into the reserve. We're just using it. It's in this budget as an operating revenue to kind of offset some of the, taking out that 30,000 from gas tax, but it will hurt next year. So we're just delaying.
The hurt.
Yes.
So we're not putting that into reserves?
Right. Or we'd have to increase our taxes another %. Yes.
Okay. And then the bridges and culverts then, that 10,000?
Was budgeted last year, but the actual spend
Was
$9.
$9, yeah.
Right, but
It's
because,
just an accounting thing.
yeah, because the actual got moved into capital.
Yes.
So, because it was capital and development roads, we budgeted the 10,000 here, but in 2022, it was actually moved to capital. So it's a year-end entry that would go through that we would have adjusted for.
So what was the actual then?
58,000. So the entire budget was between the 50,000 for the OCIF and then the 10,000 in here. What got moved to capital was 58,000.
I'm confused.
So when we did a project on Development Road, which really. in
Resurfacing, that
hindsight-
would have been handy.
It was all the prep work. It's all the prep
I
work.
know, I remember. I'm kidding. I was just joking around.
So anyways, because we should have had it as a capitalized item and it was not. It was placed in the Public Works budget coming out. And then we had to show how we're paying for it. So we put the OSIF or whatever in. So that had to be removed to balance how we reported our funding use. You know what I'm saying?
No, I think that made it worse for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think the $10,000 is just an annual allocation for
Yeah.
any work that,
But we usually do.
like maintenance work that might be needed.
Yeah.
It happened last year.
But last year, instead of that, they did a
Oh, they
larger
moved it to
project. and
capital.
moved it
Yeah.
to
Oh, to
capital,
capital.
so.
Okay.
Good job.
There you go.
Yeah,
That
there
was
you
easy.
go.
Yeah. Good, perfect.
The dip and dive.
I'd like to say at some point we'll be as experienced as that, but we never will be.
No, that's years of talking to politicians right there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So the dust laying is done for the year, right? So that line is, right, we haven't even approved the budget and that one's over.
Yeah, unfortunately, because there is seasonal work.
Mhm.
I think they
We
get
go without
that
your
we're frustrated the
consent.
budget's late.
Yeah, No, but
I think we've
that's-
made our point.
that's good. And you squeaked in $4. Like good budgeting.
I know how to figure out our HST return.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's perfect.
And then if you want to move down into the gravel, I guess. So the gravel typically had 70,000. Now this gravel for 70,000 last year, the actual was 90. That is also the stockpile. So if there's washouts or anything, that's where that gravel comes from. And I think that the manager is probably better to explain that. Because we heard from Public Works that you would like to start a gravel program, and understanding the gravel program is like $300,000 at best annually. Like, we just need to start to get there. So we've added 30,000 into that to start a gravel program. Though it won't do much, but on top of the 250 that you'll use from the gas tax.
Right.
We can do that other 300 feet.
Yeah, there you
in
go.
Between the
Yeah.
pavement.
No, we gotta start somewhere.
Trying to increase that budget for a few years.
Yes, as Mr. Rogers knows,
Yes.
yeah, several years I've asked,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
Yeah, you can go back to past videos and on our YouTube channel. And
Oh, yeah.
there's a very good explanation of what our gravel program should be and then what we can actually afford.
right.
So that is in there. So yeah, of the gravel program, the 21,000 is still being funded by that deferred revenue from OSIP. And then 29,000 is coming from the levy.
We
That's
have
an
no
increase.
ditching?
Ditching, we did, we put money aside to rent an excavator,
But we haven't done anything yet.
nothing. It's part of the capital project or Pine Lake.
But it's in operating.
Yes, because really we should start a ditching program as well.
Yes.
So if we start with the Pine
Perfect.
Lake project and we leave that amount
Yeah,
in there,
In the levy, then we have that next year.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
and we can do
I
another
like it.
road with
Yeah,
more
I like it.
gravel.
I like it too.
We've added 10,000 just for the cost of winter sand and salt, because we know that those have gone up. There's an increase in the vehicle repairs. It's
Bless you.
reduced 2022 from overall because we have a new grader. So we don't expect that we're gonna have to do as much on that one. So last year it was 137, we've reduced it to 135. But we do need to have that motor replaced, so I think that's already gone to Public Works as well, so.
We did the backup.
Oh, yeah.
So sorry, can you just back up and I missed that? So motor replacement. So we're at $135,000.
It's 13.5, I think it's, right?
Oh, is it
It's
13.5?
supposed to be. It's at 100, it says 135.
So it's
For
not,
repairs and
It's in there,
maintenance,
but the motor also is in
yeah,
Oh,
oh, the
Right.
one-time motor.
there. Yeah,
right.
Oh, that.
So we
motor.
should see that come down. How much was that motor?
13,
38.
38, yeah, 38.
So
yeah.
if it wasn't for the motor, the actual decrease would have been
About
like
that.
30, we'd be about $100,000 there.
If you look back to 2019, we're at 137,000, 2020, we're at 141. I mean, year end isn't done yet for 2022, so I'm not sure what that 46 is. So, I mean, we
Yeah,
didn't
there's
want to,
something not right there.
there's something. So we don't want to decrease that account
And find out.
and find
Yeah,
out when the, 2019 and 2020, we
Right.
were,
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
but we don't have to spend that, right? So,
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
those are like-
we're gonna be,
Yeah,
it'll
yeah,
be an
keeping
account
your
that we
eye on that.
definitely watch.
Yeah, yeah.
And then oil and gas, I think we have talked about what that looks like. So we've decreased the budget from 2022 down to 160. And then we never know, right? We don't know. So the actual that's in there right now for the 2023, that 4,700, there's actually more ordered and it goes into a different account. And then as it's used, it goes into this account. So again,
So
that
it's-
has to be something to review.
It's budgeted elsewhere and actuals here, or
No,
actuals
it's
elsewhere and
Actual somewhere
budgeted
else
here?
budgeted here. It's a year-end adjustment
All right.
or throughout the year.
Not to, excuse me, sorry, Your Worship. Not to harp on telecommunications, but it'd be interesting to see what our telecommunications costs are across the organization.
I wish I
Yes.
had asked for that.
Did you ask for that? So, and the reason I say that is then I start questioning, what are we using and is there better technology?
Yeah.
Are we using a VoIP system? Well, now that, I mean, VoIP can be tough, but like Microsoft Teams voice, if we have the proper licensing, if we're gonna do this review of our IT, well, let's take a look and see
Yeah,
what systems we can
Yeah,
implement.
because in the
Yeah.
public works department, we just have our radios,
Are we getting
internet and cell phones.
any kind of
and
economy of
internet.
scale
Yeah.
discount, like, bundled packages?
Actually, we just
like-
got a discount of 20-something dollars, I think, from Bell
No, but-
Canada at the
But
shop.
was that
But-
just you or about the
That's the
admin
shop.
staff?
Public
What
Works.
about the
I'm still
fire
on, I'm still
staff?
on the Bell Canada internet.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
Okay, we reduced the building costs because of the improvements that were done in 2022. I think the manager can explain, there was a blower that we put in and we
Yeah.
switched from oil To
to
propane.
propane.
So that has realized some savings.
We've not advertised since, I guess, 2018.
Sometimes what happens is the advertisement goes through the capital of the project. So if we do a project, say with Antoine, we'll do the advertisement and it'll be within the cost of the engineering, so it all ends up into the same capital project.
This year there'd be, I mean, it's the same as advertising because of the new landfill site changes that are coming in. So there's been posters and there's been a lot of like paper and
But it's
printing
not,
charges,
it's,
Yeah.
but it's not in this account, it's in general government.
so
So,
it should be moved to this
Right.
account. Okay,
yes. Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, we've talked about putting
yes.
a department counter on the photocopier so that those admin costs actually get
Yeah.
charged to the proper
Well,
account.
yeah, so then we can know the real cost.
Right.
Yeah. I think the only other thing in for the public works.
Well, you got a miscellaneous in here too.
It's not very big. It's like, for instance, I'm trying to think about how I would use a miscellaneous. Oh, like for instance, at environmental services, you know, those little claw grabbers,
Oh, yeah.
right? So I would have to buy one so they could pull something out that doesn't belong in a bin. That would be a miscellaneous item, a kind of idea. That's what I would use miscellaneous accounts for. Where you can't really choose in your GL what the item is.
Yeah, the other, what you're seeing here in some cases is an accumulation of several general ledger accounts. So it might be several small, very small items that just, rather than have a 3-page
Right,
summary, they're just put into one. I think that might be part of what it is too.
So the other major increase in public works is the wages and the benefits. So there was another spreadsheet error, with the fire department where some benefits weren't picked up into the budget. And then there was the full-time general labor that was hired last year in September. He became full-time general labor. And so this year he wasn't budgeted for last year. He is budgeted for this year. That position is now in the budget. And these are reflective of all of the costs.
and you're at full complement. What are we missing? We're not at full complement?
No. You're not at a full complement at the landfill currently.
Well, there's 2 staff there.
Well, we're kind of borrowing from the complement to ensure that we have staff at the landfill.
So we do need one more casual laborer for 13 hours a week. But we may be able to use that with other casual laborers who do not, they might take on 2 positions. So if we have someone who's not working, like,
They're
because our
20 hours.
casual laborers make 24 hours. So if they do that and then it's a landfill site attendant as well, they can add those 13 hours onto another position as well, so. And we do have a lot of changes at the landfill site, so there is a little bit of a buffer so that we can have additional staff from July to September at the landfill site while we're trying to get the community educated about some of those new changes.
For staffing, for your entire department, are you more or less hours this year than previous? Like, do you know where you're at
If
as
I'm
far
at
as?
more hours right now,
Yeah,
I don't believe I'm at more hours.
it's pretty
from
similar.
This year or last year. And honestly, this budget will be my first time with less,
That's
as we offer you this budget,
With less.
staff time.
So the increase in staffing is because of increased wages, increased.
Right, and then there
Everything.
was some accounting errors within some spreadsheets from previous years of costing the labor for the budget.
And that just got carried over.
Yes, myself, I don't budget my labor. I don't know what the WSIB contributions, CPP, the EI, the benefits, OMERS, etc. That was in someone else's department, but through Nikki coming in, sorry, say El Congo. And sitting down and doing this process, then we could see,
Can transfer everything.
right, we could see there was
So it's a true
definitely
budget.
something not correct. So we were able to fix that actually just yesterday or the day before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The bulk of it is the new hire. So, I mean, yes, we're at full complement. But last year they did hire a new position. So, and this is just that carry forward from that. So that changes.
Yeah.
But those are the bulk of the changes from the public works. You know, between reducing some of the revenue and then having extra expenses as well. So the cemetery, essentially the same budget, 2,000 is from a resolution from council. I don't know if it's this council or a previous council for a
Previous.
fence around the cemetery. So,
It's already finished. It was actually, it's a resolution to make it so that the cemetery actually had money to spend. There was very little money to spend in the cemetery. We actually couldn't even afford the topsoil that had to go over top. So we did add a $2,000 line in the cemetery budget last year to be able to accommodate items such as grass seed, topsoil, mending a fence or paint or etc. because the cemetery used to have no budget for maintenance needs. So that was a resolution of council.
Isn't there like a maintenance for the cemetery? Like you pay when you intern someone?
right, but we can't use that. We can just use the interest from that account.
Yeah.
Or the operating cost for the maintenance for the cemetery.
That
So
$1,080 in
Uh,
revenue.
no, that revenue is like the sale of a plot or what people pay for the plot the plot to actually be opened. But if you buy a plot, so if it's $500 to buy a plot, 250 goes into that revenue account, 250 would go into the care and maintenance fund. The care and maintenance fund is regulated by the province that we can't touch the core, that bulk, the principle of it. We own every year when a GIC or when something renews, that's when you can use just that interest portion.
So you needed an
So-
additional $2,000 on top of that to
Yeah.
be able to afford.
So
what
that's
we needed.
basically what we
It's
asked
a
for
very
last
small
year.
GIC. Very small.
Yeah, fair enough.
And the next budget is the environmental services, which is essentially our landfill site. Papers. So there is the tipping fee revenue align more with the past, even from what you see. The added revenue due to the sales of the increased amounts of recycling. Those are the two amounts added together for recycling and the sale of material. The increase to the transfer to reserves based on that study. So we're increasing that by $4,200 so that we can, that's at 54-year mark for the closure costs. That's where that money goes. There's 4,500 for the backhoe tire replacements, and then there's additional fees for contract service due to the new waste management practices and policies. So that is based on, you know, what has occurred to what we project will occur.
So this is our baseline year. So with the new recycling program in 2025, when we have, which is a conversation we need to have very shortly, actually, at Public Works, is how we're going to transition into the new recycling program. The province will take over that program and pay for it. So this is a short-term expenditure until the province goes into that transition. Unfortunately, though, fortunately, we're starting early. We're getting into our program. We're saving our landfill for the next 2 years. And actually, I was at an AOR's function and we've been congratulated because we're probably one of the first municipalities to go in this direction. It's better that if we go in this direction so that the province ends up paying for our recycling instead of the township paying to fill the landfill. So this is our contribution to get that recycling program into gear. in a few years, it should be paid completely by the province.
And I think we asked for a plan, right?
Oh, yes, we
Yes,
did
Yeah,
talk about that today.
And just even like a little map of the flow would be helpful. 'Cause
Right.
there
It looks
was-
very tight right now
It
because
is.
we're changing the face. We're turning the landfill,
Oh,
right? So we have
so
to,
that bottleneck will go away?
yes, so we have to, it sounds crazy, but you make your landfill, you use garbage to make it go. So we have to change the face so we can stay within our limits of the landfill. So right now we're turning, so the landfill starts going across this way, which will be moved away from the recycling.
It'd be great to figure out a mechanism to start communicating that to the public, because I'll tell you, the
Yeah.
feedback we're getting is just
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
not great.
Right, so that's the, unfortunately, just because we're doing that turn. And that's why we placed the recycling up there, because it's gonna be up there a long time at
And-
that end,
okay.
We need to move the construction material out of the household garbage.
right? Well, I heard there was some issues there on the weekend,
There's.
but now we have that extra body that we budgeted for to be able to be at the face.
Like,
too.
if it isn't household garbage, it shouldn't be
Yeah.
there.
But that they direct you to put your construction waste into the regular waste. Like, is there a
Yes.
place for construction?
Well, we should be making a place.
Okay,
For grinding in the future.
yeah, so that may be part of the.
Well, and you're not
Yeah.
getting, if construction material is not there, you're not getting nails in your tires. You're
Yeah,
not getting,
that's a problem.
Yeah, that's why we have a budget for tires,
yeah.
yeah.
Can I, never
Wait,
mind.
But for whose tires?
Yeah.
Whose tires is the budget for?
Oh, not mine.
I know I took a nail in my truck.
So the overall budget change for environmental services is gonna be about 17,600. So our next budget
Is that
is,
the wage? Sorry, that's the wage thing that you explained before, right? Or-
The wages all go in public
the
works.
wages are in public works.
So they're expended here and budgeted there.
No,
Nope,
no,
So
Well,
why
there's
does
no
they're,
budget.
they're, oh, okay, yes,
Yeah,
so when I did the actuals, this is where they're actuals,
yeah.
which is why I think we have some of the problems that we have in public works wages is because it's not all together.
like landfill should have their own wages, right?
like it's separated sort of in the public works budget, like I can go in and say, oh, my recycling attendant wages is this much, or my landfill attendant wages is this much.
But it's not
we can-
Like we
budgeted here.
discussed.
Right, so we
all
can
the-
figure that out by looking at the accounts, but then it's all lumped in one account in the budget. So we'll be working to break that out.
Right, so it's actual here and budgeted in the,
Yes,
yes, okay. So this
Yeah,
isn't,
you're not wrong,
yeah,
yes.
this isn't an over expenditure is what
Right,
I'm asking,
right,
right?
right.
Okay.
mhm. Parks and Rec. So Parks and Rec, I did increase the revenues to reflect the revenues that were previous as well. You can see that some of them are over. Our wages and benefits are our summer students when they come in. Then there's I think the only major changes in here, because the difference in this account is actually a decrease of 4,400. So there's equipment for a deck on the canteen and $2,800 is the additional insurance cost that we have. So those are the major changes in Parks and Rec.
Question on the deck on the canteen.
Mhm.
I mean, I get I've lived here through COVID years, but the canteen, there is no canteen.
I was gonna say, do we have a
What
canteen?
can-
You do on Canada Day.
So we're gonna spend $7,500 or
I don't think that's like park improvements, and not that I can speak on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Committee, but I'd like to help spend their money. So often, like for instance, we bought some bags of cement so we could put all of our benches into the ground that we purchased with our funding from for the waterfront. So we bought $800 in cement and we built all the little pads so that we can hook the benches in so no one can lean back and
Sure.
fall. So that's the kind of expenses that come out of that $7,500 budget.
okay, so just back to the deck on the canteen. Is that coming from a dedicated revenue source that needs to be spent on?
No,
tell me the priority of putting the deck on the canteen that we don't use?
It's councils.
Okay, thank you. I,
It's for you to say, I'm sure, I don't know if this has gone to the rec committee or in previous or, okay.
This is the first time I'm hearing of it.
I know we did repairs to it last year, so I don't know if something's kind of flown.
like, do we plan to have a can, like, if somebody with context, and maybe if it's the staff person with public, with not public works, with rec committee, has context as to what the budget line is inferring to, that would be helpful
Yep.
to understand. And,
Oh, I'm sure that we'll
Yeah.
answer that, no problem.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But if we could revisit that the next time we bring
Yeah.
a budget forward, that we can say it makes sense or not.
The last big repairs I remember coming through the rec committee has been a few years, and it was like outhouses and things like that at the other parks.
Right, and then, like, for instance, in preparing for Canada Day, now we have the splash pad. We've always had a change room. However, in the past, it was okay to have wide open doors on your change room. Not so much now, so we did a little, we made up a door because the door frames aren't the right size to buy a door. So those items go through that, like, parks repair.
So that's your annual budget for
Yeah.
everything,
For
not
that
yeah,
kind of
for one
stuff,
deck.
yeah.
Yeah, enough for, yeah. Meters comes on. The next one is the library, which has a decrease of $5,000.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Look at you go, eh?
And then planning and developments, the revenue is decreased because we're going through an official plan amendment, so we're not gonna have any funds coming in for official plan amendments. Because they won't be looked at, but it's pretty small. And then we are still seeing some zoning amendment applications though, so that comes in. So overall, again, they have a decrease of $6,100. Planning and development. No, sorry, it's an increase of 6,100. The first number in there. There is 500 extra. There's already funds in our budget. That is part of the professional services. There's typically 2,500. We've gone down to 2,000. So that there's still, we're without a planner right now, and we will need to use some planning consultants, so that will help with that. And then there's still the advertising and what we need to do for the official plan review. And then we did send 2 members to the conference. And then it also includes that $5,300 study that needs to be done that the province wants done, so that's in there as well. Economic development, we've left in an expense of $500 in case there is conversations or meetings or anything that happens regarding that. And then the medical building, the change in there. Obviously, there's changes to the medical building, but we don't know what they are. So essentially, it has stayed the same, except for some janitorial cost increases. We've added some money in for the physician recruitment, both in Mattawa and for us to do some advertising as well. And then they have their telecommunication has drastically increased because of the electronic records management program that they now implement, which is actually, I hear, a very important issue when we're trying to transfer physicians in, because now all those records are digital, so it's fantastic. But there's fees and everything to that. And then they've also switched their internet as well. So
To Starling.
so there is a bit in there as well. And I think overall that is our general operating budget. So I did do a few charts. I'll try to get them up. Just to explain. So I think on this one you can see from the chart. This one, easier to see. What our operating budget is and how that looks per department. And I don't think it's any surprise to anyone that Public Works is in a small community is always the largest budget. And then I did speak about the boards and committees. And that's our municipal share. So 35% of our budget automatically goes to those like MPAC, DSAB, the OPC contract, and 65% of our budget is actually manageable here.
And this does not include Castle Home right now, right?
It does include customers.
It does.
But what it doesn't include is the impact that we'll see in a few years.
Yeah.
Well, so that
That's what I meant.
percentage will likely change. I mean, that's a pretty big draw.
It'll increase. Right?
Yes. I do suspect.
Mm.
And I haven't gone through those other fourth. So the municipal department changed. This is the actual dollar figure. So the blue is in 2023, the red line is 2022. So you can kind of see like there's no huge increase on either one of them, but in percentage changes, I did do a quick chart so you can see that the cemetery is the largest one to increase.
By $2,000.
Yes, and it's a minimal amount, but it certainly does show that in
It shows-
relation to everything.
Shows the way you can spin
else.
the
Yeah,
numbers,
yeah,
eh?
yeah.
Pie chart.
Yeah.
I mean, just to review again, I can. I do, if it comes up. I don't know that it will share. It's not going to. But if we go back to the first page again on our budget, on that sheet.
We're starting
So-
over again.
Yeah.
It was so much fun the first time.
Yeah.
So the top column, obviously our revenues and our expenses from our department, that's that portion that you get to spend. The bottom section, it's levies and requisitions. So that's the MPAC, the Madawaska Conservation Authority, the Health Unit, DSAB, Castle Home, our Castle Home capital levy that we're putting into that reserve, and that's, so every year we're putting in $30,000. And we say 30,000 now, but we don't know what that's going to change. It could, we do have, it could be $18,000 for the next few years, but we won't know those numbers. So we're just keeping it at the 30,000 that we know.
So we're just essentially adding a percentage every year to our
That's
tax
it.
levy to
Fine.
lessen the
Then
instant impact. in one
Then
year.
in your fourth year, you won't have to add $90,000.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so, sorry, maybe this is I'm getting tired. So what are we doing with the $30,000 we're collecting currently? We're putting it in reserves?
Putting in reserve, so at the end of the 4 or 5 years, there'll be money in a reserve. And I know there's some issues about whether there's going to be because interest rates are much higher than they were originally.
Right, so maybe it'll help
Yes,
offset
So
that.
that could be used to offset some of that,
Right, okay, that's great. Good planning.
or it could be moved to another reserve.
So on reserves, is it all divvied up? Like, how does it work? I mean, is it all just thrown in and you take it out, or is it like, reserves for Castle Homes is here?
So the bottom of that reserve policy section did list out all of the reserves that we have. So I believe, and I think at the top, you'll see where I said that it was adopted in 2017, but it was amended, so it's been changed. And part of that change was that it was broken back out again. So Mr. Rogers and I are going to spend some time going over what those reserves were built for and how and why they were broken out. So that we have a better understanding on how to keep it going forward.
You can have one-time reserves too, right? Or like limited time limited reserves.
Projects, yeah.
So that it might be good that the ones that are mentioned there, the tax levies, sustainability, all of that, the ones that we know that we have to do are in the policy, and then the ones that are short-lived could be again, an attachment or an appendix, right? So-
There were a number of other reserves that were closed and moved into the categories that are in the reserve fund policy, because they were there and there was really no,
Right.
Material money.
I guess the theory is sometimes every department wants their own reserve fund. Well, that's not the way I promote it.
Yeah.
I was hoarding money like crazy.
Yes,
Well, and I, like, I mean, I'm a firm believer that Public Works should have their own reserve,
yeah.
because they're the
And this is-
biggest,
this is not-
they're the biggest spender.
Or
That
they will
doesn't
be the
surprise me.
biggest user of
Yeah,
the
but,
reserves.
yeah, but everything they have costs most,
Yes,
so.
even now, they're the biggest user
Mhm.
of reserves, but there were some really small ones that just didn't make any sense to keep on holding on to. And there still are others that Nikki's going to have a look at just to see why they're still there.
Mhm.
I'll just say my only challenge comes when we see over budgeting on items that come in under budget, and then it's automatically put into a reserve. And well, then all of a sudden you're starting to see numbers come to council that aren't realistic because they're trying to put,
True.
right? So that's where I get concerned if it's that specific on how we're gonna allocate those underspends.
And all of the reserves, that money is invested, right? So
There is some money that is invested, yes.
Okay.
Some of the reserves are,
we should be making money off of our money. right?
yes.
But if you look
Yeah,
at too
and-
much, then you're stuck, right?
No, some short-term
There
investment.
is some. And we typically, I mean, from the first time, and you'll see the notes at the bottom of that first page where, the first time we looked at this budget, we got all the committee budgets together and tallied it up. We're at a 14.1% increase in budget over budget. And we have, working with staff and we've gone through a lot of those accounts where, so let's look at the bat and we added in a couple of years on the actual so that we could get a better history to determine what we really need to budget based on the past and what our future plans are. So we have reduced it by about $100,000 just by going through in the accounts. But it's, yeah.
We gave up some things.
Did we talk about non-union wage increases though?
We haven't,
We're not got to that yet?
no, because, well, typically you do, there's be a policy of something that it mirrors.
No, is that the case?
I believe so.
Okay, so we don't have to talk about that. It's just,
I would love if you did.
I'm sure it's a discussion for our next budget.
okay.
Absolutely.
Question. When you have concerns that it's over budgeted and then it goes into reserves, do you feel in looking at our budget or all our expenses, our revenue, do you feel that we could go back and look at it again? Or are you, that was your question. So do you feel that our staff should look at it again? Or do you feel comfortable with what you see?
Well, that's a big question. Holy cow. Geez, your worship. There's nothing that I'm not, well, the whole thing makes me uncomfortable, but not because of that reason. So there's nothing that's like really standing out to me that's making me uncomfortable. My only point was what Councilor McGinnis was saying was he likes the Public Works Department to have its own reserve budget. And then typically what follows is there's a policy that would say any project that goes under budget or expenditure that goes under budget, they can actually, the additional revenue or additional budgeted amount can be put into reserves. And I just have concerns that in future years, I'm not saying I see it in this one, in future years, that could tend to lead to wanting to try and over budget slightly on everything so that you could build your own reserves within a department. And it takes really a lot of the discretion away from council when you start doing that, right?
Yes, I understand. I just want to be sure that we have to be comfortable with what we have here, because I have to firmly believe that the staff has looked at everything as closely as they could, right? So I'm good with everything that we went over.
I mean, I don't think there's any more room to cut anything else.
No, I would agree with that.
No, I don't think so neither.
You would have to cut some of the bigger ticket items. Like don't have a gravel program. The 30,000 that we're, or the 29,000 that we're levying to start the gravel program, you could remove that. That's a percent, right? So, and I know that we haven't got into that section yet. So overall, right now, we're looking at a levy increase of about 10%, which because of growth in a number of factors, it works out to a total tax increases, a tax rate increase of 7.74%. So I believe I gave you some information from Okta, and I can do this better when we have a public meeting for the budget to have it adopted, because there's still some information I want to get. I know that there's ways to do it and show what the increase is per 100,000, and I just didn't have the time to get this in right now. But that first page shows that the overall tax increase is 7.74%. The second page is essentially the properties with the increase. So there is 66.5% of the households of the properties would have an average annual increase of $151 for the year. 88% are less than 240 on average. So there is 11.7 that would have more than a $370 annual increase in there. Not annual, but this year increase. It's not going to be every year.
So how is that determined?
By Okta.
So like what's the,
Is that Mr. Rogers' question?
Basically, it's
well, what determines that this guy pays 66?
the properties with a larger assessment, we'll see larger dollar increases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are the
Size
dollar
of property.
increases. So
Yeah.
we're all gonna see the same.
Percentage is the same, you just pay more dollars.
It's just trying to look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What it's really costing the average
How many
taxpayer is so much per year or so much.
Our
per month.
taxes went down when I was
Or
garage.
Yeah.
Right.
Percentages can be
That's not-
scary.
So I'm just trying to show what the,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, I mean, it does impact, it does seem, you know, like 7.74% is a large increase. But again, based on, you know, in 2018, when our tax rate was actually like minus 0.3, in 2020, when it was minus 3, you know, on a tax rate, we do have to catch up on some of that. So
Like why,
there's questions we can't answer.
Yeah.
nothing stays at zero, so why would that?
We were in the negative, yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean,
I would just say again, though, if we had assessment growth or like,
Yeah.
Yes,
if 3%,
yeah.
this would actually be sitting at 4.74% is the
Correct.
number we'd be showing.
Correct.
So the fact that MPAC is not
Exactly.
increasing
Yes.
makes our numbers look worse than they would have
Yes.
looked.
Yeah.
Same amount of money that people are paying additional
Yeah.
than they would have paid. It just looks like a bigger number.
Mhm.
Or if you had more properties.
Right.
More buildings
Correct.
to pick up the increase, then the.
So we need to be
increase for the
promoting
rest of
people
the
building
would
on their
be much
properties.
less, yeah.
Yeah, we need to promote
And
growth.
I mean, and
People
speaking of
building
that,
on their existing.
when I
properties.
spoke to the building inspector, you know, there was an impact report that came out that said that building permits are actually on the decrease, despite everything the province is doing to get that 1.5 million house. There's, you know, on average, the building in the province, but we are still seeing like a 200% increase. So last year we had a total of 30 single family dwellings, and I believe right now we're, you know, between 25 and 28
Yeah, that's
that are
pretty good.
potential. So and we do have that growth, and you can tell because our levy change is 10%, but our tax rate percent is 7%. So you do see that the growth impact on that. So, and we need to sustain it. So, you know, I think that with an ambitious council, as you guys have all said, budgets will be earlier, we'll be getting that to tender, we'll be, be able to save some of those funds, and then we're gonna be able to make improvements that are gonna encourage people to come here.
And just be a little more conservative over the next couple of years to make sure we're weaning off the reserves and.
Yeah. I mean, if the biggest thing to drop a percentage is take $30,000 away for gravel, I mean, that's a pretty lean budget.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, when we got down to can we talk about the 8x8 deck we want to build? In front of the
Yeah.
canteen? We're doing all right.
That's good.
I have a
It's
concern.
not-
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, so overall, that is our budget, that is our impact. I guess our next steps, we can pass operating the capital separately. And then we do need to have a public meeting. I do need to give 21 days notice prior to having that public meeting. So we could have it, if I get that out, if you're comfortable with the budget, with the operating budget, and then we could get that out so that we could have the meeting
Absolutely.
July. Have it out in July, and I can finalize all the details.
Like 21 days from
and
today?
Maybe 21 days from like next Wednesday.
Okay.
Um,
May I ask, why is the July 10th meeting for the council?
I would assume.
Because maybe we could take that day
July
for the public
10th.
works. And like library and parks and rec seems to be wiped out.
Is that
Library is not meeting until September. So I can
Okay.
tell you that.
Maybe
And I
I'll
canceled
post a little thing saying maybe we could use the 10th. Since it's the usual meeting night.
Yep.
Okay,
Whatever works.
that's not very far away, so.
We don't have a second meeting in July yet.
And when you
But we
say
might be able to use that
21 days
second
from next Wednesday
Yeah.
ish. Okay, well,
Well, I
it
need
just,
to have the ad in the paper.
I will be out of cell phone range for the last week of July.
Oh,
so-
okay.
No, well, I'm hoping we can actually get 21 days notice out as soon as, is that because?
Okay.
And it's only because if 21 days pushes to,
August. So what date?
let me, I'll get back.
Are you on the first week of August?
I think I'm back, I'm still on holidays, but I'm back in cell phone range the first 2 blocks. In the base of the Grand Canyon, which is probably not the best place to do a budget meeting. Last
We'll
week of July,
meet you
so
there.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
Yes.
there's room in the budget for that.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Sorry, we all had to go.
Yeah.
Take a helicopter, yeah. So what are we looking at? Tuesday, the August 1st? No.
I can get back with you with the
Okay,
date.
okay, okay.
I'll see when I get it out. I know tomorrow's very busy,
Yeah.
and then Tuesday I can get it out.
And I'll share the exact days I'm out of the country if
Okay.
we can avoid that. Awesome. If you can't, then obviously I understand. I'm only one member of forums and I don't want to hold up the process, so.
Pretty convenient. You're gonna miss that meeting. That
Well-
public meeting.
Well, I also have
I don't
a
feel good about
planning
it.
meeting that I need to have, so I need.
I will get you those
that as well.
exact dates.
Perfect, and then we can schedule the date, but.
If
you're
Nancy's watching on
comfortable-
YouTube right now, she'll probably text me the dates.
Can Nancy, we're waiting.
Yeah.
So we can adopt the operating and the capital separately, but hopefully we can get them both done quickly as possible. I think the most urgent one for the capital is our truck. So if we can bring that back to the next council meeting, if you're comfortable with that, and we can bring it to the next council meeting to have that resolution so that we can get that one approved.
Does the capital need 21 days as well?
Both budgets, we need
Yeah.
21 days. I believe it's 20, it could be 20, it might be 21.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna make much of a
3
difference.
weeks. I just remember always thinking it's 3 weeks notice, public notice for the public meeting.
And can we do both in the same day?
Sorry?
We can do both in the same,
Absolutely.
you can post and
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll present again very much like this and we can, if there's public, and then we can.
Council Clark will probably have a whole new set of questions. for you.
Yes.
So the motion, you would like us to adopt the operating budget and the capital budget as
Right.
presented?
Recommend,
You could recommend the operating, that you would like to recommend, you recommend to council,
Council,
Not accepting the budget, but just that it move forward to public meeting. Perhaps that's the best way.
the General Government Committee recommends to council.
That you accept the operating budget as presented. Your resolution, the council won't say that, but.
Just the operating budget, the operating capital, oh, because
Well,
the
we're waiting for
capital is, we're
capital
waiting
for a
on,
report, so if I'll do the ad for both
okay, great.
budgets, and then you will see the budget on July 10th, hopefully.
Yeah.
So on that resolution, if you can put and further, that the capital budget be reviewed.
Will we be having this as a meeting of council or town of government, not public?
We can do.
It's committee of the whole stuff.
Further, that the capital budget
Be reviewed with the Public Works Manager's report. I have so many other words, but I'm trying to dictate it.
Should be during the
Public Works
committee meeting on,
We can't say on yet. Haven't decided
Oh.
yet.
at the next Public Works
Yes.
committee
Then it's
meeting.
Public Works meeting.
This is a book again.
It's not 3 pages.
I'm just happy you're writing it. This is great.
Okay. Moved by Councillor McGinnis, second by Councillor Featherstone, that the General Government Committee recommends to council that it accepts the operating budget as presented, and further that the capital budget be reviewed with the Public Works Manager's report at the next Public Works meeting. All in favor? Carried. Did you happen to lose one of these?
Oh, it's right here.
Okay. What time is it?
8:48.
Moved
job,
by
guys.
Councillor Corbett, second by Councillor Clark, that the General Government Committee hereby adjourns at 8:48 PM. All in favor? Carried.
Wow. Nobody wants to call.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Good night, everybody, and thank you.